And at this point, I'm going to transition and introduce our next speaker for the day, who's been very patiently sitting on the call with us. Hi, Dan, if you're there. Turn up. Wonderful. I just wanted to do a brief introduction for Dan, and then we'll pass the baton. So Dan is the Vice President for Business Development at Astrobotic, one of the NASA CLPS providers. Astrobotic will be sending the Peregrine lander to the moon, targeting later this year on ULA's rocket. And of course, just to connect that back for the students, we heard Tori Bruno talk about ULA and this mission. And so we're thrilled to have some of Dan's time this morning as he speaks to us about the theme for today, which is, in their case, Astrobotic's take on operating on the lunar surface. And with that, Dan, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ariel. Great. So thanks very much for the kind introduction. It's great to be here with you all today. As mentioned, my name is Dan Hendrickson. I do business development here at Astrobotic. And Astrobotic is a lunar logistics company. As Lee had mentioned, actually, yesterday, there was the announcement of the VSAT Awards. We were very excited to be one of the selected companies to be a part of that. In fact, that's kind of, I think, an important marker for our approach and our intent as a company to really be focusing on all aspects of lunar operations, from the delivery on the actual landers to mobility on the surface, to then also actually operating services and providing additional technology in the form of space robotics for different customers around the world, NASA included. So the VSAT, I think, is an important sort of late-breaking news that is kind of very well connected to the DNA of our company, which is really, from the start, has always been to be about lunar logistics, not necessarily just delivery itself on lunar landers, although that is a definite big part of who we are. Is the lander part of the business in a big way, which I think you'll get a sense of here in a moment. So it's great to be here with you. As mentioned, we were founded back in 2007 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were originally a spin out of Carnegie Mellon University here in town. So we've been at this for quite some time. I like to joke with folks that we have been interested in pursuing the moon before the moon became cool again. So we have held a long-standing belief that the lunar future is an important part and parcel to our space future, which I think, with this slide here, I think kind of highlights a lot of that. So this is kind of the slide that shows what has originally motivated us as a company. You'll see a variety of different use cases and applications and things that we think are really exciting potentials on the moon. At the same time, maybe again, against the backdrop against other companies, you'll find that other companies will say that there is a very specific use case on the moon, whether that's ISRU or otherwise, and that is the single thing that motivates them. We take a little bit more of an agnostic market-driven approach, where we want to provide a variety of robotic capabilities and services that meet the needs of a variety of different use cases, so that those different applications can be tried out. And that folks, whether it's companies, governments, universities, nonprofits, and even potentially even all the way down to the individual, it's possible for them to try these use cases out with our platforms and the things that we provide. So from the 14 years that we've been in business now, these sort of use cases we've seen kind of as top level themes. And this is really the market demand that we're seeing. Obviously, since the Apollo program, we've come to really appreciate that the moon is an even more dynamic and even more interesting destination than we even appreciated at the time in the 1960s and early 70s. We've come to appreciate, of course, that there's lunar water ice. There's some really intriguing geophysical characteristics of the moon, like the magnetic anomalies on the surface. There's, of course, the lunar lava tubes, which in essence are caves all over the moon. So it's an even more intriguing destination, and we're finding folks around the world who want to take advantage of the opportunity to get to explore those areas more from a scientific perspective, from an engineering perspective. Can we make use of some of those features? And to do just general exploration. And then, as mentioned, the lunar water ice, it's a big motivator for a lot of folks. There's the potential to really live off the land for the first time on the moon, or I should say in space, really on the moon, to demonstrate it for the first time. And then potentially in the future, the opportunity to potentially even have fuel depots that make use of the constituent hydrogen and oxygen in that water ice. So we feel like those are the real sort of basic building blocks to try out a variety of new ways of hopefully living and working in space, establish that presence off-world, become a multi-planet species, and even potentially engage in activities like mining and manufacturing in the future. So it really kind of all starts at the very beginning with delivery. As mentioned, we are a CLPS provider, and we're really proud and excited to serve that program. In addition to CLPS, we also have a variety of other customers that are signed on to our missions, which I'll highlight in a moment. Our first mission is going to be this year. It's our Peregrine lunar lander. It's our smaller robotic lander. It's going to carry 16 customers representing 7 countries in some capacity, whether that's as a company or government or a university, nonprofit. And then in 2023, we have our Griffin lander, which is going to fly, which is a much larger capacity vehicle. Have more details on that in a moment. But these are the sort of baseline platforms that are enabling our end-to-end delivery services. So not only do these vehicles carry a variety of different payloads on a single mission, but they also provide power and communications to the payloads to be able to operate once on the surface. So they can actually remotely through VPN connect with their payload wherever they happen to be in the world, get data down from the moon, and then also issue commands to be able to instruct and actually command and control their payloads. And then as an extension of our lander services, we also provide rover mobility services. And that's really, again, it's thought of as an end-to-end delivery service in the sense that folks that buy mobile payload service also, in addition to having the spacecraft delivery portion covered, then also have the capability to have mobility on the surface that's directed by them. So we have a couple of different platforms to meet that service. We have our Cube rover, which are, like the namesake sounds, like CubeSats. They're much smaller than a traditional rover. They're really meant to reduce the barriers that are historically seen for folks to be able to get rovers on other planetary bodies. So we have about 2 to 6 kilograms of typical payload capacity. They actually do go up in larger capacity sizes, almost you can think of it as U form factors that could actually go larger, but 2 to 6 kilograms to start. These are small rovers that can be utilized on Peregrine or Griffin. There's a lot of really interesting applications that you can utilize with that. They're sort of right at the very edge of what's possible, because the smaller you go on rovers, it gets more and more challenging to be able to drive on the lunar surface. But there's some kind of interesting opportunities to be able to leverage, like, for example, sort of marsupial relationships between rovers. So you have a large rover working with a cube rover. You can send that smaller rover that maybe costs significantly less, have it take more risks, kind of essentially report back to the larger rover ahead of wherever it's going to go. So there's some kind of disaggregated opportunities as well, chances to actually have constellations of rovers, if you will, with cube rovers. So that's in addition to being able to reduce that barrier, cube rovers also offer the opportunity to be able to do new kinds of mission sets on the surface than maybe you would be historically allowed to do with one single large rover. But then also in the large single rover category, we also have our Polaris vehicle. You can kind of think of it as almost like a pickup truck for the moon, in the sense that it has a singular payload bay that is modular, so you can actually swap payloads in and out, and have a diverse collection on a single vehicle. And it's a much larger vehicle with greater capacity, about 90 kilograms. It's well suited to fly on a lander like Griffin. So if you had a Polaris and a Griffin working together, it's possible to have a pretty robust robotic lunar lander and rover combination to do some interesting mission cases. So just to kind of talk about the manifest more specifically. So as mentioned, we have our Peregrine lander, which is going to fly in 2021. This vehicle will be going to the Lacus Mortis region of the moon. It'll be carrying 16 customers. Actually need to update that country count. It's actually gone up. This is a vehicle that will also carry, in addition to those non-NASA customers, also a CLPS task order. So for those that may not be familiar, the NASA CLPS program stands for Commercial Lunar Payload Services. It's a really innovative and very well-designed program by NASA to take advantage of organic lander delivery services that have been evolving over the last decade plus in the market. So these are capabilities that have not been directed by NASA originally. This has been organic commercial interest that has been developed over time. We've signed, I think, I want to say about 14 customers prior to our CLPS task order, to give you a sense of kind of how much interest there has been in getting back to the moon and having capabilities and being willing to pay for them. So that's been I think, an important marker for the program. And that's one of the reasons I think NASA was prepared to flip the switch on the CLPS program and to get it started, because they really saw this organic demand that's been multi-year at this point. So it's an exciting time from that perspective. And so it's a program that over about 10 years, NASA can order missions over and over from providers. There's a preset vendor pool. We are one of those vendors, 14 companies in that pool. And they put out orders to deliver and provide full end-to-end service for the payloads that they want to be competed. And then each of the vendors compete for the opportunity to deliver those. And it's expected that there will be about 2 NASA CLPS task orders, as they're called, about once a year going forward. So we're going to see a regular, steady cadence of these missions going forward, which I think is really exciting, because it really opens up a variety of different use cases and really different ways of thinking about planetary missions. I think folks on this call are probably pretty familiar with the fact that many planetary missions are kind of boutique in nature, and they're specifically designed for one particular payload instrument suite or mission. In this case, we have the ability to have product line approaches where we utilize the same product line over and over again, have the payloads potentially even do follow-up measurements within maybe a year or two of when they were first deployed, which is really remarkable, because historically, of course, a mission to the moon is maybe once or twice a decade. So this could really change how we do business on planetary destinations. So this is a quick snapshot of some of the payloads that are on board. There's a wide diversity of customer types. Some are businesses, like SpaceBit, for example, is sending a really innovative robotic crawler. So it's like a rover, but use sort of spider legs instead of wheels. And they're trying that out as a technology demonstrator for their business. We also have space agencies that are on board in addition to NASA. So we have the Mexican Space Agency that's doing a small rover disaggregation experiment. University of Mexico City is building that. So it's a program that allows an agency like AEM, as it's known, to have capacity, to have the ability to fly to the moon, but not have to make that upfront investment of launch vehicles and spacecraft and all the ground infrastructure needed to do these missions in country. So it really allows them to focus and to specialize, which I think is good for everyone then, because we can bring new constituencies, new communities into the fold, and allow them to really thrive in the areas that they want to focus on. So it's a kind of an interesting, diverse field here that we have. You might also notice we have DHL. They're a sponsor of our mission, which is pretty exciting to have a huge corporation like DHL also get involved. That is historically, they've had some experiments or dealings on ISS, but I don't think they've really had a big space presence. So this is sort of another marker of bringing non-space communities into the fold with the manifest that we have here. This is our second mission. We consider it a mission, even though it's not a lander mission. It's going to be a rover mission that's going to fly on another CLPS lander. So this is our Moon Ranger vehicle. This is a rover that will test some autonomy techniques. That's not really been historically something that's been done on the moon. It's all been kind of direct command and control with humans in the loop. And so this is intended to really have it go outside of the domain of direct control and see if it can operate. And then it's also carrying a neutron spectrometer to do what we think will be the first ground truth measurement, hopefully, of lunar water ice of some kind, if it can find it. And in all actuality, it would be really to just demo that technology for the first time on the surface. But it very well could actually yield those first measurements. So this is going to fly in 2022. As mentioned, this is going to fly on a different CLPS lander. So it's essentially kind of a payload, even though it is a rover. We consider it its own mission in a sense. It's flying with the mast and lander that'll be flying in 22. And then in 2023, we have our Griffin lunar lander delivering the NASA Viper rover. Viper is a really exciting mission that's very different than the past ones that NASA has done, because it's going to be doing widespread ground truth measurement of lunar water ice on a pretty large scale compared to like the Moon Ranger, for example. The mission here will deploy to the South Pole. It will drive around and characterize what it finds, and then not only is there really interesting scientific implications to those findings, but there's also the opportunity to get some sense of whether it's economically possible to extract that lunar water ice for usage in the future. So in a sense, it's a markedly very different NASA mission in the sense it's really the first one, I think, arguably, that is focused on resources in a very direct way for future utilization. In addition to, of course, doing science. I mean, it is a science mission directorate mission, but it's again, that resource component is just so interesting and so exciting. So because again, the implications of this, I think, could have far-reaching insights for the commercial community as well as for the exploration and science community. So we're very humbled to be carrying this rover. And we're primarily, we are just delivering the vehicle. So we're going to provide delivery on our large Griffin lander, and then open the ramps and allow it to drive off. And at that point, the two vehicles will have essentially separate missions at that point. So the rover will communicate direct back to Earth on its own for a significant amount of time. So this is just kind of a quick snapshot of some of the hardware updates that we've had of late. We've done 150 mobility tests with our Cube Rover platform. This is a prototype that we built. It's being tested at Kennedy Space Center in one of the pits that they have. I believe we tested around 11 different types of wheel sizes, because again, once you get to that smaller scale, it gets kind of interesting and challenging to be able to get the traction and mobility that you normally get a much larger rover on the moon. So that's a big focus for us as a company, is to get that right. So that's it. They're testing. We've also been doing a lot of payload testing. We brought our payload computer simulator to NASA centers to be actually testing the actual flight payloads that they're going to be sending on our 2021 mission. So you can see that in the middle picture. And then on the far right, we have our structural test model that was tested last year, was put through its paces for the launch vibration load, passed with flying colors. So that structure was verified for usage, and we're proceeding now to integration this year, and then launch it at the end of the year. So it's lots of great progress being made there. On the Griffin program, we've done procurements for our propulsion systems. I say systems meaning the mainline propulsion, which you can kind of see there with the axial test occurring with our partner Frontier, the supplier for those engines. And then on the far left, the ACS, attitude control system thrusters on the far left, where they're being tested by our partner Agile. And then on the far right, we have just a quick picture of our headquarters that recently opened. We have a 47,000 square foot facility here in Pittsburgh, dedicated to doing up to 4 lander missions at once, or a mix of rover missions in addition to that, or in the mix within the other missions that are being put together there. This is a facility that has really been designed from the start for lunar surface missions, in the sense that we actually have a dedicated rover pit that we've built in the facility. We have, of course, a spacecraft high bay, clean room to be able to integrate our spacecraft. We also have a mission control room, so we're going to be running our missions right here in Pittsburgh directly. So that's also within the facility. And then we have a number of other labs as well for testing and for getting the vehicle ready. And then I should also note that we have a payload control room. So for customers that are here on site during the missions, they can actually pop their laptop open and actually run their payload here. And we have a payload representative from each team working very closely with the mission team, so that in case there's any decisions that need to be made in real time, they can be done so. So the first phase of this facility opened this year. Second phase is opening, or sorry, the first phase was last year. The second phase is this year. So that's moving right along, and we're really excited to have these facilities come online. So just a quick snapshot of the overall lander service. For 1.2 million per kilogram, we offer end-to-end service. There's a variety of different integration locations for payloads to be attached both above the deck that you see on the left or below it. We also have enclosure decks. So if we need to have a payload that's more enclosed from the environment. That's also available, although it's not pressurized or it's not totally separated from the space environment, but it does provide a little bit of thermal separation. We provide 8 to 12 days of operation on the surface. So we're not yet surviving the lunar night with our vehicles. That will be a capability we'll look to on-ramp. But for these first few missions, the challenge of getting to the moon and operating in the first place is already challenging enough. So we're focusing on just really having that be the baseline capability and then add lunar night survivability in the future. We provide a standard bandwidth and comm rate for the customers to get the data. And then we also provide power over the life of the mission as well. And as mentioned, we've got a variety of different surfaces for integrating payloads, which you can kind of just get an example of there on the bottom right. And then as mentioned, Cube rovers offer a variety of different payload capacities, and it's all inclusive. So 4.5 million per kilogram for surface mobility, but that includes the launch, the landing, and then the actual operation on the rover itself. So it's a modest capability compared to maybe much larger rovers. But again, for payload customers around the world that don't normally have access to mobility, this is a very strong interest for them. And then lastly, I just note that we have a pretty extensive customer service program that we've really set up for helping make sure our payload customers are successful. So we've got our payload users guide, which you can find on our website. We also have a variety of other documents and aids to help ensure success. And each customer that signs on with Astrobotic has a payload manager that works directly with them to make sure that they're going to be fully apprised of all the milestones and things that they need in order to be successful. So that's just a quick overview of Astrobotic, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dan. Just perfect timing for today's class. I think now the students have seen, kind of fundamental considerations for thermal, for dust management, for power, and now you have Dan's presentation to really scope for all of you an example of near-term opportunities to potentially charter payloads and get to the surface of the moon with, in this case, Astrobotic's capability. And one thing I'd like to call out for the class is I have really appreciated over the years, Astrobotic was one of the earlier ones to come out and put that 1.2 million, per kilogram to the lunar surface on their website, which is a very useful benchmark for me and a lot of planning that we did for, several years. And so, this session, you guys have the slides, go back through and think about these different points that Astrobotic is sharing as you are scoping feasibility when you guys do your feasibility reviews for your missions. With that little PSA, do we have any questions for Dan?
Yeah, I got a question. Yeah, hi Dan, thanks for the great presentation. And we learned something about the thermal system design of the Apollo program from Ron. So I'm curious about the thermal system design of the Cube rover. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a big challenge because you really have to have enough radiative surfaces to be able to get that heat off of the vehicle. And so there's a very intentional design to get enough radiative surfaces for the vehicle to be able to operate, and that's kind of a big part of the approach. One of the things I should also note too is that when in terms of heating though, and making sure that payloads are having the regulated heat that they need, we provide that power signal to the payloads, not just for them to be able to just operate, but also to be able to regulate their own thermal conditions. So when payloads are being built, we provide a general envelope for them to design inside, but we aren't providing like a physical wall or any kind of physical enclosure. So we provide kind of a top deck that they mate to, but everything under that is completely under their control for their own design. And so because they have that kind of ability to customize, which I think is a positive in most cases, they can take advantage of different view factors and fields of view by doing so. But then at the same time, then they can decide for themselves how they want to handle their own thermal control with that power signal. So we don't dictate how they approach their thermal strategy, but at the same time, we then also don't provide it for them. We leave it up to the payload designer.
Cool. Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Yeah, Dan, thanks very much. We got a lot of budding entrepreneurs here at MIT, and I wonder if you could maybe just briefly give a little history of how Astrobotic got started. You said it came out of Carnegie Mellon and how it grew. What's its current status? Is it still private? Is it a public company? And any advice for budding entrepreneurs who want to start space businesses?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We are a private company. We're actually majority employee held, which we're really proud of as a company. We are not majority held by outside investors. So, that's something that we're really proud of as a company, and kind of a rarity across the space industry. So we really try to take advantage of that opportunity and focus on the long game, think about the long term, rather than like a quick exit for quick return for an investor. It's more about, no kidding, like really trying to make space and the moon accessible for everyone. And that requires a lot of patience that in some cases, some investors don't have that patience for. So in our case, we were spun out as a private company. We remain a private company. We are over that span of years that we got started, we really just kind of built it brick by brick, in the sense that we didn't have a large major investment up front. We actually did our growth from direct revenue. So initially, we did things like SBIRs, the Small Business Innovative Research contracts that NASA provides opportunities for every single year, which are fantastic because they'll advance your tech and they'll also give you some revenue that's non-dilutive. So it's a really good way to get started in a lot of ways, and also to get a track record. So, NASA will say whether or not you're performing or not. And that means really a lot to other customers then, if you have that track record to point to. And then we also did payload sales. And so that was a long road. We started those, I think the first payload sale was back in 2012. And that sale was for the mission that we're about to fly this year. So we had some very patient customers who were very understanding. We were very transparent with them on where we were and what we were trying to do. And thankfully, they still signed on, and we're very grateful to them for seeing the long-term vision. And between the payload sales and then the government contracts together, we stayed in business over the span of years, built revenue over time, and then reached critical mass. Which again is, I think, a kind of a unique story. Certainly the market conditions of the last few years have very much favored what we're doing, but we had to maintain patience to see those market conditions. We believed that they were coming, and we wanted to make sure that we were going to be in a really healthy and strong position to be able to take advantage of them. So, I think sometimes patience is something that is maybe an undersold value or virtue for entrepreneurship. There's definitely, I think, being drawn to entrepreneurship, there's a tendency for excitement and, really kind of going after the next thing and being aggressive. And that's important, absolutely. But patience is another really key element of it, which can be tough, especially if you have outside investors. That's also really tough to maintain patience and have them maintain patience. So those are maybe just some initial thoughts.
That's a great point, Dan, and to hear the story that you guys also started out early with SBIRs makes a lot of sense. For this community to know, in case any of you are considering this, MIT runs several in-house programs to help prepare you to apply for SBIRs. So there's the MIT VEP program out of the Innovation Initiative, and then there's ICOR, which is actually an NSF-run program that does trainings for entrepreneurs to start thinking about your business tech. And so I really recommend any of you who are thinking about that to look into these two programs. I believe we have one more question for Dan from Vaishi.
Thank you, Dan. That was also a really good overview and a really impressive array of platforms that you've developed. My question is actually similar, just to follow up on what Jeff had asked about. Can you talk a little bit about other companies that are working in your space, and how do you differentiate yourselves from them, whether in technology, and how do you look at that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So I think one of the major differentiators for us is it's a heavy focus on customer service, frankly. So that's a major part for us. And then on the technology side, we really believe in demonstrating and showing the work. I mean, that's kind of a crude way of saying it, but we really try to focus on delivering and really making the hardware the focus. So there's, I would say there's other companies in this field that To their credit, they provide a lot of excitement around going to the moon, which is great. They talk about really big, bold visions, and you have to have vision in order to get in the space industry in the first place. But I think what sustains you is to have credible technology, credible teams that can actually deliver on the promises that they're making. So we've put a heavy emphasis on the hardware. We sometimes liken ourselves to a blue collar space company, which it kind of aligns with our Pittsburgh identity in a lot of ways, where we have focused on the delivery of the actual results on the contracts. And we ask folks to judge us by the missions, by the actual tech. Maybe an example of that is our terrain relative navigation sensor that we've developed. This is what we think of as essentially as kind of a bolt-on sensor to feed GNC systems on our own lunar landers, but then we also sell that to other landers because we believe in the capability in the product so much. So we've invested so heavily on having that capability here in the company to the point where we feel like it's a commercial offering that we can provide to even our competitors. And we're excited and thrilled to provide that to them. So I think that's sort of part and parcel in the focus on the tech and really focusing on delivering and focusing on being able to do the thing that we say we can do or that we have plans for. And maybe that's not as an exciting of an answer, but that's really kind of the vanilla answer really of who we are.
I think it's a great answer. Thanks, Dan. Wonderful. With that, I think we should prepare to close out class today. I do have just a couple slides that I need to show the students about the status for assignments. So with that, let's thank Dan again. Thank you so much for coming to our virtual class today, and we hope to stay in touch. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Cheers.